I'm calling this meeting to order. Today is it's 6 o'clock p.m., January 31st, 2024, Provo City Planning Commission. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Commissioner Willeen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll have a roll call with the commissioners stating their names and if they have any conflicts.
Jonathan Hill, no conflicts.
Raylene Walling, no conflicts.
Melissa Kendall, no conflicts.
Robert Knudsen, no conflicts.
Daniel Gonzalez, no conflicts.
Lisa Jensen, no conflicts.
Andrew South, no conflicts.
Barbara DeSoto, no conflicts.
All right, although this is a public hearing, only the presenters and those invited to speak by the commission may speak or ask questions unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to speak until called upon by the chair. When speaking, please be sure to speak into the microphone so that the record is clear. Please state your name and the city of residence for the record. Please limit side conversations as they interfere with the audio recording. If you need to have a side conversation, please step out of the chambers. Please do not attempt to interrupt or speak over people. Intimidating or threatening speech or behavior will not be tolerated at any time. Please refrain from clapping or cheering during the hearing. We'll begin with item number 1. John Bunderson requests project plan approval for the Provo River Delta Gateway Park located at 301 North Lakeshore Drive in the A1.10 Agricultural Zone, Fort Utah neighborhood. And our staff member Dustin Wright will be presenting. Thank you.
We can do item 2 with item number 1.
Yes, and item number 2, Provo Parks and Recreation requests approval of a zone map amendment from the A1.10 agricultural zone to the OSPR zone in order, that's open space preservation and recreation zone, in order to build a new park located at 301 North Lakeshore Drive, Fort Utah neighborhood.
All right, thank you. So here's the properties that we're talking about tonight. The city owns both. So this is 2 parcels highlighted here in red. The city owns both parcels, 301 North Lakeshore Drive, adjacent to the Provo River right there along the north. And the site is just under 5 acres of property. Our Parks Department has been working on this design for a park at this location. The site plan has been reviewed by our city staff, our coordinated review committee. We find that it complies with the code requirements, and a condition of approval on this item would be to that there's a plat that combines the 2 parcels into one. So here's another look at what it would look like on this site. This is called the Provo River Delta Gateway Park. That's being proposed here tonight. This will be including trails and connections out to the delta, the river delta that's been recently designed and built. It'll go onto existing trails along the river out to the lake. So it's going to be a real positive connection for our city having this park here. There's going to be parking for bikes, vehicles, and trailers at this location so that people could bring a horse or things like that as well. So it'll be a great amenity. And then there'll be restrooms also located on the site. So here are those. And then the second item, item 2, is the rezone. So it's currently in the agricultural zone, and that zone doesn't allow as a permitted use for parks. And so part of this request would be to rezone it to our open space, our OSPR, open space and recreation zone, which does allow for parks. And so this would be the request, and that's what we've reviewed it for, to make sure it's in compliance with that zone. And so that would be the other condition of approval for the project plan, would be that the property is rezoned to this OSPR zone. So let's see, the general plan supports the open space. Recreation chapter talks about having goals of connecting the lake to the mountain through the river corridor. So increasing opportunities for usage along that for recreation are goals from the general plan to help facilitate walkability, bikeability, connections, infrastructure along the river. These are all goals that this project will help meet. And also in the chapter for river and lakeshore, restore riverbanks. So part of this project would help with that, expand opportunity for outdoor gatherings and relaxing along the river, and expanding trailheads and connections in our city. So this project, we're grateful that it's coming forward at this time, and with the rezone, we'd recommend a positive recommendation to the city council. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. And we have Mr. Bunderson from Parks here as well that could probably answer a lot of questions as well.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the staff member? Go ahead.
I just had a couple of questions, Dustin. I see on here where you have trailer parking. Are you going to allow trailers to park overnight?
That'd be a good question for Mr. Bunderson. I think he'd know the programming a bit better on that.
And you also mentioned something about equines, horses. You said something about people could bring their horses to ride. There's no place there to store horses or keep horses. So it's not really an equestrian park.
Yeah, I think there's the trail shown there, equestrian trail, and then the trailer parking is where I got that information, but maybe Mr. Bunderson could provide more information. Those are good
I'll
questions.
ask. Okay.
Let's have Mr. Bunderson come up just to, while those questions are fresh on our minds.
Good evening, Commission. This is my first time addressing this commission. The questions about equestrian access here, it is designed for day use only. It will be a Provo City Park and adhere to the same hours of operation of all Provo City parks, which does not allow overnight parking. So the equestrian component of this is to allow one of two access points for people to trailer in and bring their horses and ride or walk their horses up to that new bridge crossing that's shown here, and then to the west to head out to the Delta, Provo River Delta mitigation site. So it will tie into what is available out on that side of the property, or Provo. Did that answer both questions?
We have another commissioner.
I just wanted to understand a few things about this layout. I can see from this map that's on the screen, on the top right, it looks like there's some concrete pads with picnic tables,
Yes.
but then there's like an oval shaped concrete pad. Is that just a bench? Right there where Sandy's
Yes.
pointing?
Yeah, that is a bench adjacent to the walking path.
Okay, and then let's see, my other question was, how does the trail tie in? When it goes across that bridge, does it then go up, and is it running adjacent to the current trail? Is that big gray line, is that the current trail on the top?
Yes. So this will be the new connection for the existing Provo River Trail on the north side of the river to come to the south side of the river. That's
Okay.
what that pedestrian bridge purpose serves.
Okay. I'm trying to just get my bearings. Last time I was riding on the Provo River Trail, I got to a point where it dead ended and you had to go out onto you had to go out onto Lakeshore Drive. Is that what I'm seeing here currently with the construction? That's where I'm That's the same junction I'm thinking of?
Yes,
Okay,
that gray access road to the north is where they've got a large tree across that road that would prevent vehicles currently during the construction process.
okay. So that will open that up for both access points.
Correct.
That'll be fantastic. Couple more questions. The part of the river that's the original river, that's not the big, healthy, diverted river, is it going to be stagnant? How's the river health there with this Delta and Park project?
That's a great question. That is outside of our project scope,
Okay,
but the blue river body that's this narrower strip through there is that channel adjacent to this property. And because it is, I'm going to say, a little bit fresher coming out of the Provo River, will not be aerified in that section.
okay,
So I don't know of any of the conditions downstream from this point, but we will have a small boardwalk and some access for the public to go down into that section of the for recreation, outdoor recreation.
and the bottom left part of this, the map on the screen,
Yes,
is that what you're talking about?
yes.
I just worry that because we've sort of, the flow is slowed over there, I don't want it to become a stagnant, nasty Bicentennial Park-ish mosquito zone.
That is unfortunately not something that we monitor or regulate. It's outside of the
Okay.
scope of the Provo City.
And then that iconic shade structure that is on the map, is that a pavilion with tables in it?
Yes.
So there's quite a bit of picnicking room here. My last question is, are there any concerns for putting a restroom at an area like that that's so close to the river and at a low water table? Is that something I assume you know about those rules, but I just want to make sure we're not putting a park in with where a restroom can't go.
It's a great point. We are raising the site out of the floodplain for those facilities.
Okay. Thank you.
Do any other commissioners have questions for staff or Parks Director?
So it moves.
Okay. Seeing none. We'll go ahead and invite is there any district representatives present? Neighborhood chairs or there's no more neighborhood chairs, but
District representatives.
neighborhood representatives. Okay. We'll go ahead and open this up to the public hearing, public comment portion of the hearing. Anyone here like to comment on that? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on. Close the public hearing, public comment portion of the hearing. And we'll take this time to discuss this item among the commissioners. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm super excited about this. The existing Lakeshore Bridge trailhead was actually a significant improvement to the trail as it was. And so having a big park there is a nice amenity to offer. I am excited about the forethought that ties it in with the other trails, both the horse trails and the walking trails and bike trails. It's right up next to Lakeshore Drive, so that'll also be, I feel like that'll beautify that entrance as you turn off of Center Street and head north. I love that there's education areas, that they've thought about that, and a nice playground. So I would be 2 thumbs up for this. I feel like the zone request that they're asking for is compatible because it's adjacent to one on the north with the park that's already there, and it's compatible with the agriculture and the residential zone. So those are my thoughts.
Go ahead.
I'm also excited for it as a resident of this area. We've been hearing about it and seeing plans for years now, right? So it's good to see it's moving forward. I'm a little curious just because this popped into my mind right now. My neighbors will ask, do you have any timeline of when this will be ready to go? Ready to open, finished?
The project will go out to bid as soon as zoning and planner approved. And construction, we are running behind the Bureau of Reclamation improvements that are happening for the stream alteration that they're doing there. So when their work's completed, then our contractors can move in. So it's this 2024 calendar year that construction will be started. We may not be able to complete that this season with some
But this year or
temperature-sensitive
next?
items, but it might be next spring.
Excellent, wonderful.
I don't really have anything else to add, but Commissioner DeSoto, do you have something?
I was gonna say, I think it's great.
Well, let's hear a motion for this. And we could read in both items and note the conditions for the parcels to be combined into one, and also conditional on a rezoning.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I move that we approve this requested project plan for the Provo River Delta Gateway Park located at 301 North Lakeshore Drive in the current A1.10 Agricultural Zone in the Fort Utah neighborhood, with the following conditions: that the two parcels are combined into one parcel and that the property is rezoned to the OSPR zone.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there a second? Second. Commissioner Newton seconds. Go ahead and vote on that.
Aye.
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 That's unanimous, 8-0.
Do you want me to make the second
Yeah.
motion?
Let's hear it.
Okay, I make a motion that we recommend approval to the city council for the requested rezone from A1.10 to the OSPR zone, in order to build a new park located at 301 North Lakeshore Drive in the Fort Utah neighborhood.
Is there a discussion on the motion? Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Let's go ahead and vote.
Aye.
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 It's unanimous, 8-0. Item number 2. All right, let's move on to item number 3. Development Services requests approval of an ordinance text amendment for the adoption of a transferable development rights overlay zone citywide application. Staff member Ardmore will be presenting.
Okay, thank you, Council. Okay, we're here because there's been quite a bit of work on the background of this text amendment. So over the last year, Public Works, specifically engineering staff, has been in talks with Development Services staff and some engineering consultants on trying to identify and address some issues up on the East Bench with subdivided lots that were subdivided years ago, are zoned for single-family homes, but have a number of issues associated with them. So as a city that's supposed to protect the health, safety, and welfare of its public, we needed to find a solution. So the problem, if you can go, oh, I found it. The problem is multiple layers of hazardous conditions. So let me just go through those real quick to give you some background. On this layer, we have known landslide areas and areas with 30% or greater slopes. So you can see the red and purple through there have identified these affected areas. And if you look closely, you can see blue parcels that have been identified as they're vacant parcels. So we didn't identify any that or already having people living on them and single family homes or anything else on the property. But vacant properties in this area, we identified through some of these layers with geostrata. Again, with this layer shows fault lines. So any of the fault lines that run through here on the east bench are an additional risk. And again, the properties are identified through that layer. Similar, a little bit different scope is rockfall. So rockfall, rocks, boulders coming down from the mountains affecting properties on this east bench. In the past, we've had a couple homes hit by those rocks. We want to avoid that in the future for obvious reasons. So the solution is this proposed ordinance. So a lot of different municipalities have something like this. We looked closely at the one in Mapleton. They had a really good program. As we discussed this with their staff, it seems like their ordinance has done a lot to meet the goals that we're trying to meet. Park City was another example that we kind of ran through and created this ordinance. So in total, there are 67 lots identified by the engineering staff with this ordinance as areas that should be zoned for TDRS, that's sending sites for transfer of development rights. So these vacant parcels highlighted here would retain value in their land by being able to sell 1, 2, or 3. I think most of these cases are 2 or 3 unit credits. They could sell those to property owners, developers to be placed elsewhere in the city. So that would kind of come as the next step to this proposed ordinance. The city would come back and rezone these with that TDRS overlay. Now to receive those, that's gonna be on a case-by-case basis as developers or property owners in the central Provo or on the west side are in talks with any of these property owners here on these sending sites. They can come and ask for TDR receiving overlay and incorporate that into the project. And those will be judged case by case. So this to staff is a reasonable solution. It's a fair solution for these property owners that have been sitting on these properties for a while. Some have looked into building, some haven't. Some have done geotech analysis, and a lot of it's cost prohibitive. So a lot of these have sat vacant over the years. But these 67 lots, because you might be wondering how much does that equate to transferring. If all of these were able to take part of this program, it'd be 163 unit credits out of the 67 lots presented on these 3 slides, on these 3 maps. A few of these on the far right on the Paiute Drive side, you see some 4 high-risk parcels there. Those are actually in the county at this point. But we wanted to identify those and protect those because it is in our general plan to annex that part of the area in. So at which time that's annexed, we would want to apply this TDRS to those 4 individual parcels. So that is the solution that we've come up with. We've received some questions from Commissioner Jensen, and maybe I can just try to address those before we open it up to more questions. The first question was regarding how do we get public review on these transfer of development rights. Like I mentioned, each time somebody wants to receive these, it's going to have to go through a rezone, which is going to come through the planning commission. It's going to come through neighborhood meeting. It's going to go through the city council. And that way we can case by case see if it's an appropriate use of the credits, if it's not adding too much density to any specific area, make sure it's feasible to the utilities that are there and so forth. The same answer for your second question, Commissioner Jensen, on how do we know that the rights will be honored. Again, they don't have to buy the rights before they ask to be used. They just have to kind of have an agreement in line with the seller of the credits, the transfer of development rights. Next question was, what happens to if so many of the properties in the TDR zones are developed at base densities that there aren't enough remaining to receive the transfers available? Is this a realistic concern? We believe that it's not really a concern of staff. There's plenty of units, capability with infrastructure, transportation that are planned for through the central part of the city and through the west side of the city, that these 163 unit credits wouldn't have a large impact on that. Now, you pointed out 1433B. Let me go to that. 070, number 2. Sending areas shall be limited to property that has been found to have natural hazards within or adjacent to property boundaries verified by the city engineer. The question that made me point to this section of code was Commissioner Jensen asked if anybody could come and ask for the TDRS overlay to be applied to their property. They could ask for it, but as this section states that it has to be found to have significant hazards identified by the engineer. So there's quite a bit of, there's just kind of a high bar to be part of the TDRS, the sending sites. And then the other suggestion that I think we should probably take and maybe edit this language is in 1433B 120 subsection 2. As we reread this after it was identified by Commissioner Jensen, we thought maybe it makes sense to pull this subsection out. If only a portion of development rights attached to a sending site or transfer, the area of the easement shall be the same as the total area of the lots. So it should probably be either a all or nothing, right? It was this subsection was a little bit confusing, and I don't think we'd want to create that scenario where half of a lot on the east side has a conservation easement. I think it's pretty complicated. So staff's happy to make that change and strike that subsection number 2.
Can I ask a clarifying
Yeah.
question there? So if they wanted to, say, we've looked at properties before in the hillside areas where some of them are buildable and some of them aren't. So they could just subdivide and keep the transfer of development rights on the property that.
Yeah.
These are already subdivided lots,
These
though.
are
So the other ones,
subdivided
okay.
lots. So any further subdivision of them would
They're
probably
going to
wouldn't
be
meet the
smallish
underlying zone
anyway.
code,
Okay.
right. So yeah, we're happy to strike that section. It's not meeting the goals really of what we're trying to do.
Can I ask a clarifying one too? So the sending sites are determined by the city engineer.
Right.
And staff, and there's no map of the receiving sites. So that's something where a property on the west side would say, I want to get these, and they would then rezone for that overlay.
Yeah, they'd come in with a
Okay.
rezone request for the overlay and a concept plan showing how they use those.
Okay.
And then the council would have discretion on that.
All right, since it said that was happening in the next step, I thought maybe you guys were gonna come forward with a map of all the west side properties or somewhere in the city that you determined were the receiving sites. And so that's where I was like, we can't just blanket that and then they'd be like, we don't want them here. Okay,
Right. No, the only map that we'd come back with is the sending sites. So we'd want to identify and place those on our zone map right
okay.
away.
And any property in a residential zone could apply to be a receiving
Yes.
site.
Yeah,
Okay.
potentially. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. And then, yes, I think that goes through all of the questions that we received before the hearing. Obviously, I've got up all the maps and the proposed language. If anybody has specific questions on any line, I could try to address that at this time.
Go ahead if you have any questions for Mr. Ardmore.
I have one question. It's not really related to the maps. It's more about the market for these rights and how that gets communicated to potential developers. I mean, I can see the benefit to prevent development in areas that are unsafe or hazardous. But just to be able to capture that value, for owners to capture that value, how does that get marketed out to developers where this is a new thing? Maybe there's, or is there been evidence from Mapleton how they've been able to successfully do that, or?
That's a great question. The nice thing about these lots is these property owners have been struggling in knowing what to do with them. A lot of them have changed hands every couple of years. So as soon as this, if this was adopted, I believe the market would take care of it. I think the property owner would jump at the chance to sell those rights, to put a conservation easement on his property, get his value out of it financially,
Right.
and be done with it. And we know that there's developers on the west side that would be probably happy to receive some of those.
That's the part that that is my question, is how do those developers find out about that? What's the messaging to get that done? So that,
That's a good
because we
question. I don't know
kind
if
of
I have
get what we
answers for
want, right, by
Yeah.
preventing development there, but
So one thing that's happening already is that we meet with developers not infrequently who want to increase density on the west side. We've already been telling them, in order for you to do that, the city's going to need to see some tangible benefit. Either you need to have affordable housing within your project, or you need to have certain housing types that meet objectives of the general plan, or you need to transfer density off of these. We've already been telling developers that this is in process. And in fact, we ran this ordinance by a developer to make sure that it was feasible in the marketplace. So I think word's going to get out pretty quickly.
Okay. Great.
And the total number of units is 263. You said 163 a couple times. The total number is 263, right?
No, it's 163.
Okay.
The
All right.
credits, yeah.
From 67.
From 67 residential lots, there's 163 credits
Yeah.
involved in those. I'm sorry.
I just remembered another question I asked that I don't know if you answered without me realizing, but I wanted to make sure we understood that one development credit equals one residence or one unit,
One
right?
unit, exactly.
So it's not like some percentage bonus. It's actually, this one would have had a house on it, so you can have one extra unit of whatever size on the property that you apply it to.
Yes, and there's three different, as you can see, there's three different.
2,
layers to
3, or
that.
1. Yeah.
Right, and everything that's been identified so far is either 2 or 3.
Okay. I keep thinking of questions. I'm
And
sorry.
that goes back to making it marketable, right?
Yeah.
So 1-to-1 is a little bit harder to sell. 2-to-1, it's probably hopefully gonna go quick.
Are there any properties included in these maps here that were some of those that tried to build and then before they finished, their house collapsed? Or are they stuck in the limbo zone where they don't actually qualify for this?
These are all vacant. There is one property.
Maybe on 1450, is that one? 1450 East?
Yeah, there's one up here that landslides and things affected it. The house is vacant, has been vacant for some time.
Because I think there's one on 1450 that it started to get built and then a landslide messed with it. And so it's just kind of sitting there in a half-built state, but.
That might be the case, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, the majority are vacant.
And so if they feel like they hear of this and they could come to you and say, we feel like we should be in this, and that it could apply to them.
It could, yeah, we'd have to do analysis with engineering and our consultants.
Doesn't have to be
Right.
completely vacant, untouched.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the district that would like to comment? District representative? Okay, seeing none. Public comment portion of the hearing. Open it up for public. No comment from the public. We'll go ahead and close the public comment portion. Commissioners?
I think this is an awesome solution.
Yeah.
It benefits both halves of the transaction.
I mean, I like this a lot. I'm curious to see how the receiving sites, when somebody comes to apply for that, how, will they get a nice welcome rug put out for them in their application, or what opposition is. But I do appreciate the transfer of value, that there's still value that's given to the property owners.
I can foresee that there may be conflict as the requests are made from. We often have developers who come forward with something where they want to improve increase the density of their project, and there's other ways that they can do that Mr. Pepperoni mentioned. So will they feel like they got what they purchased I think it'll be tricky for the planning commission and city council to make those judgments maybe. But I don't think that means it's the wrong thing to do. I just think we'll have to look at things differently.
Is anyone ready to put forward a motion?
I'll put forward a motion.
Great, thank you.
I recommend that we send a positive recommendation to the municipal council for item number 3. Development Services requests approval of an ordinance text amendment for the adoption of a transferable development rights, TDR, overlay zone, citywide application.
Is there a discussion on the motion? I'll second the motion. Let's go ahead and vote.
Aye.
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 Pass. Approvals recommended 8-0. With that, that's the end of the items on the agenda. We appreciate the public members for being here. And thank you, staff. Is there a motion to adjourn? I'll move to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Aye.
Aye.
All right.